It certainly is good to be with you folks again, I must say. I've missed you very much. Kim and I got here Thursday night, and we've just had ourselves a ball. We've been to Tona's, we've been to ROD, we've had coffee with the boys, we've had wine with our folks where I used to live. Evelyn gave us this wonderful party yesterday, and the beat goes on. We're just really having a great time. I must tell you about Kim. One word about Kim, my daughter. She is without a doubt the greatest daughter a dad could have. Kim and her husband Blaine have been super kind to me and let me live with them for nearly 5 months while my health took a dip. They have spent countless hours taking care of me and taking care of my medical needs. And they found this place for me to now live, which is just perfect for my needs at this time in my life. And it's 8 minutes from Kim. And so it's just as good as it gets. I'd also like to thank Heidi for giving me the opportunity to give this talk. My wife Roxanne and I were members of this church for 23 years. Since I have moved to Florida, this talk gives me a chance to describe the history of the church as I remember. This is my version of the history of the church. And it also gives me a chance to recall some of my memories of my time with you. Now, I usually start these talks with a joke, and I got this one hot off the press from Nancy Nightingale about 2 days ago. It seems as though a bunch of 15-year-old boys decided to go out to dinner. And they said, now where shall we go? And they decided to go to Captain Jack's, because across the street from Captain Jack's lived Linda Hopkins. And they thought they might get a chance to see Linda Hopkins. And while they were having dinner, they said, this is a good thing to do. Why don't we meet for dinner once a year, every year? And they did. Okay, fast forward 20 years. They're 35 years old. They kind of get together. They say, where shall we go? They said, well, how about Captain Jack's? The waitresses wear tight shorts, and their martinis are a thing to have. So they go to Captain Jack's. Fast forward 20 years. They say, okay, let's do it again. Where shall we go? Let's go to Captain Jack's. Let's see now. Captain Jack's is near the gym, and the fish there is very good for you. It's healthy. And they have a great wine list. Let's go to Captain Jack's. So we went to Captain Jack's. Fast forward 20 years. Where to go? We're 75 years old. Well, Captain Jack's is handicap accessible. And they have an early bird special. Fast forward 10 years, they're 85 years old. Where shall we go? Well, let's go to Captain Jack's. We've never been there before. I had to tell Nancy, she got a big laugh. So Roxanne and I moved to Ogden Valley in June of '96. Immediately joined what was then the Unitarian Universalist Society of Ogden. A large part of our decision to move here, to retire here, was the local presence of a warm UU church. We liked the minister Sarah Lambert and became friends with her and her husband Andy. While I was board president, Cal Hansen was the treasurer. And I would meet with Cal monthly to review his data before a board meeting. At our meetings, he frequently came in with a line like this: sorry, Tom, but I lost some data because of that damn computer that has that damn Microsoft software on it. And also, a couple of us would meet with Sarah before the board meetings to set the agenda. We would go to Roosters, where you have to eat to drink. So we would get pretzels and beer and figure out what our agenda would be. And our finances were very fine in those days because Sarah did everything. She just, she was very good. One of Sarah's sermons that I'll always remember was about her being date raped at the age of 19 or so. That devastated her, and she went into counseling and she learned karate. She ran into the Burke several years later and confronted him, and he claimed that he didn't even remember the incident. So she had been carrying around all of this emotional baggage all those years while the Burke just merely went on. So she decided then to drop the emotional baggage and get on with her life. After serving our church for 5 years, Sarah took a sabbatical as she and Andy trekked Nepal. Not long after her return, she announced that she had accepted a minister's position in a church in New Jersey. In one of Sarah's last sermons with us, she said that a minister's role is only to minister, not to make friends. That really disappointed me, and I told her after the sermon was over that she was my effing friend. I didn't care what she and she accepted that. Kathy Rays followed Sarah as an inner minister. Kathy had her flaws, but she was instrumental in leading us and our friends at the Unitarian Congregational Church of Christ in a weekly protest in front of the city building against invading Iraq. We would get honks of approval, fingers of disapproval, but we had a good-sized crowd each week until we called it off when Bush and Cheney pulled the trigger. When Kathy left, I was on the search committee for Matt Cockram, our next settled minister. Ironically, the search committee debated whether to call Matt because he was a Christian. Isn't that amazing? My positive feeling about having Matt as my minister turned to disappointment as he stayed with us only 2 years. Matt once said that he liked all aspects of being a minister except for writing sermons. Kind of like a chef that doesn't like to cook, you know. Matt's partner was Chad Byer, and he did some substitute teaching while in Ogden. And he said that following class, some students would come up to him and whisper in his ear and ask if he was gay. So he saw the need for these kids to be themselves someplace. And the church had just formed a social justice committee. So Chad suggested that the social justice committee take on the job of forming a drop-in center for gay youth. And Roxanne and Evelyn were 2 members of that committee. As soon as the committee agreed to do that, Matt said bye-bye, Chad said bye-bye, Roxanne and Evelyn were left holding the bag. But if you want to give a bag to 2 ladies, you give it to Roxanne and Evelyn. Undeterred, Roxanne began writing grant applications. She got $25,000 from the UUA, plus additional funding. After 6 months, Evelyn joined as co-chair, and outreach was born. The rest, as they say, is history. They hired Gary Horenkamp as their executive director. They got their own 501c3 status. And outreach provided a safe environment for gay youth to be themselves. The number of youth in attendance steadily grew, and it is surely the case that that program saved lives. 2 straight white-haired ladies are personally responsible for arguably the UUCO's major success story. Evelyn, you did a job, baby. After Matt left, we had another interim minister, Bruce Russell James. Now, I believe he was a bit of a sexist, and he considered himself the CEO of the church, not the minister, the CEO. As you could guess, there were several conflicts that emerged, but the good news about Bruce is that he was 2/3 time, and our finances also did well during his 2-year stay. Following Bruce, we hired Teresa Novak as our settled minister. She was enthusiastically welcomed, and she made a positive impact on our church. she began the practice of including youth in our service. She led us in getting the Ogden City Council to finally pass an act that prohibited discrimination in housing or employment based on sex. We were recognized by UUA as some sort of exemplary church. I don't remember the term now.
Breakout congregation.
Breakout congregation during her tenure. And despite her skill in the pulpit and good relations with the congregation, there were some problems. Without recognizing and addressing the problem, we did deficit spending for every one of Teresa's years, 7 years that she was with us. Each year we hoped to gain more members and thus more pledges, but our hopes were never met. Our sizable reserve decreased by varying amounts each year. After Teresa, we hired Shelley Page, who recognized our financial problem and left us after 3 years because we could not afford a full-time minister. After Shelley left, a miracle occurred in this building. With no minister on the payroll, our finances turned positive, and our Sunday services developed by Craig Stiles and his worship committee, and now Heidi and the worship committee, were just out damn standing. Heidi conducted the memorial service for Roxanne, and in my view, her ministerial skills are as good as any of those we've had from any minister that we've ever had. The congregation developed an almost palpable, yes, we can attitude, and suddenly all's well in the University. A lay-led church asks a lot from its members, and it seems to me that you members have delivered. Another positive aspect about lay-led churches, and the church is, without a doubt, your church. The preceding section is shared just to provide what I consider to be the historical context of this church. I think others would have different views. But please know, I realize that the ministry is a very difficult profession, and I have no ill will towards any of our previous ministers. I have admiration for ministers. In a sense, they report to the entire congregation, and they work tirelessly. As you look back on various aspects of your life, it's wonderful to have fond memories. You can replay those memories in your mind over and over again and smile. You know, and I do a lot of that. Here are some of my memories. I remember socializing down here after the Sunday service and finally persuading Roxanne to leave as she was running for mayor Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And I remember about a dozen of us having lunch at Rooster's one Sunday a month, as organized by Bonnie Hanson. I remember that, I'm holding my hand up because I'm supposed to let the blood flow down. I remember that we enjoyed throwing a summer solstice party for UUs every year on the longest day of the year, or the Saturday nearest June 21st. You party animals tend to congregate around the punch bowl filled with sangria and equal and generous amounts of club soda and brandy. I just pour until my arms get tired. I remember that we donated dinner, bed, and breakfast for 4 at our annual fundraising auction. The Hansons and the Herrings would bid hundreds of dollars for a fun-filled experience in Ogden Valley with Roxanne and me. The priest bid one year, and I remember Gabe and Eli sitting on the floor in front of the oven watching a baked Alaska brown. And I remember not one but 2 wine tastings over at Jeff and David's where they really do treat you very well over there. I remember serving on various committees where invariably we all pulled together to get the job done. I remember Bill Hackett doing a fine job as board president, and for some reason he's going to do it again. I remember how you folks are cordial and cooperative at your annual meetings. That's not always the case with Unitarian churches. I remember the days when we had joys and sorrows. Kathy Herring had recently had surgery, and her joy was Percocet. coffee with John Hines once after we had moved to Ogden. We enjoyed that. We said, why don't we make this a weekly event and get other men from the church in? So, Brian and Brent and several joined us. And then we would go to Cow's, and therefore the weekly coffee club was born. I remember realizing that Evelyn Bertelson personifies the adage, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. That's the way she does. I remember being in awe of the generous contribution that Dan and Mary Arno made to the endowment fund. I'm still in awe of that. That's just, it's like 70 grand or something like that. I remember feeling slightly guilty, however, to be proud of my large pledge each year. I remember a Sunday visitor from Salt Lake attending one of our services, remarking that day's service, after the service, now that's the way to do church. I felt real good about that. I remember looking forward to the summer poetry slam service, which I understand you folks had recently. I remember several spiritual journey services in which I learned a lot about whoever was speaking that Sunday. And on one of those Sundays, I will never forget, Christine Charbonneau said that when she left the Mormon church, she got Sundays off and a 10% raise. And I remember the Sunday when we voted to change our name from the Unitarian Universalist Society of Ogden to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ogden. Jane Marquardt said that she now tell her friends she's going to church instead of going to society. And I remember walking, I think we had a picture of that, walking with you from the YCC to here on the first Sunday that we met here. I remember that Roxanne and I took the YRUU youth to Roberta Glidden's one Sunday. Roberta, former church member, showed the kids how to do silkscreen. And the kids were very inventive and made several very creative patterns. Tom Taylor, my tech-only brain failed me, and I did a circle within a square. That's just all I could come up with. I remember being given the opportunity to give several homilies here. My son Brett says that if I have an audience, I am happy. And I remember seeing so many of you at the Sundance movies back when that damn Sundance organization deigned to show films in O-Town. And I remember once I had David Green, a former member, on my left. I had Roxanne on my right. I had a Rooster's beer in my hand. And I was watching the movie E2 Mama Tambien, which is kind of a soft porn movie. After that, what could heaven be, And I remember then board president Laura Anderson telling one of my favorite dirty jokes in this room at a beer tasting fundraiser. I still quote her joke. Whenever I see someone drink a light beer, out comes a joke. And I remember enjoying leading 15 or so of you to 3 Raptor games each year. Suzanne Storer would shout out encouragement to the Raptors even louder than me. And I'm very pleased to see that tradition is being carried on. So good for you, good for you. And I remember looking forward to the Tuesday with Tom dinner when we would sup and palaver together. And again, that seems to be continuing. So again, good for you. So in short, I treasure the life I shared with you for 23 years. So as not to be forgotten, I'm going to jack up your endowment fund a bit, should I ever die. And just to let you know, I may die in Florida, but the service is going to be held in this building. So say hello after the service. I'll tell a story, or if you're unlucky, maybe a joke. And then we're going to go to the Angry Goat. We have reservations for maybe 15 or so, 12, 15. And if you haven't been there, it's a corner of Washington and 26. On the corner is a bank. Behind the bank is parking. So park back there, enter the Angry Goat through the rear entrance. Come in and we'll just continue to have a good time. Blessed be.